It is the 29th day of March 2017. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us here on KTN News Desk. A lot happening in the country today. We've had the gender ruling. Sharon Momanyi will be joining us briefly in a short while to give us details about that ruling, its impact and some of the things we expect. And it has been quipped to be one of the biggest rulings made for the gender, especially for women in leadership in this country. So Sharon Momanyi will be giving us those details in a bit. Of course, we are following the updates from Mombasa. Governor Joho has just finished giving his facing detectives. He will be giving a press briefing later, but our reporter Francis Ontoma will also be joining us. And what you're seeing on the screens are the crowds that went with him to the detectives' offices. And of course, he's expected to address them together with the media on what has transpired inside there. Of course, this and more lined up for you here. Let's first take a look at the highlights. High Court gives Parliament 60 days to enact a legislation to effect two-thirds gender rule. Drama as hundreds of Governor Joho's supporters escort him to record a statement. And National Lands Commission Chair Mohamed Swazuri appears before Lands Committee probed him. Good afternoon. Our sign language interpreter is Meresha Witi and I am Akisa Wandera. Let's start off from Mombasa, where Governor Ali Hassan Joho has just finished recording a statement over allegations of fake academic credentials. He was escorted to the offices of the detectives to record his statement by a mammoth crowd, his supporters from Mombasa, as well as lawyer James Orengo, who was acting in capacity of his lawyer. Currently speaking now is James Orengo. Let's just cross over there live in Mombasa and listen in.
Na tutapambana nao. Mimi nataka kuomba watu wa Mombasa, msiwe na hofu, tutashinda. Na yoyote anakuja Gavana Joho anakuja Kenya nzima. Na yoyote anakuja Gavana Joho anakuja Raila Odinga. Na mimi kama wakili nimejitokeza, hakuna Joho alikiona mimi mjomba. Na tuna wakili chungu nzima. Hata gavana wa Kilifi leo amekuja kama wakili. Na kingi pia, ukimguza kingi pia utapata matatizo ambayo hujaona. Watu wa Mombasa mjue ya kwamba ile mkutano mlikuwa nao hapa Jumapili imepatia Jubilee wasiwasi kubwa sana. Na mjue Gavana Joho anafuatiliwa na hawa wakora, si kwa sababu yake binafsi, ni kwa sababu ya nyinyi wananchi. Wangapi wako tayari kufanya jambo? Na mimi pia niko tayari kufanya jambo. Nitarudi Nairobi leo nimwambie baba ya kwamba Mombasa imekaa gangari. Otoma. ODM. 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 Asanteni sana.
Nataka niseme hivi, Mombasa oye. Nataka niseme hivi, nimkaribishe Abdulswamad atambue wajumbe walioko hapa. Tunake wabunge na
lazima mmoe.
Abdussamad. Hello.
Haya, namtambua dadangu Mama Mishi Mboko yuko hapa, sio? Ndugu yangu Mheshimiwa Kanmoti yuko hapa na sisi pia vile vile. Dadangu Agnes Zani is here with us. Tuko naye Rashid Juma Bezimba na tuko naye pia vile vile kitimba mimba cha ODM ndugu yetu Badi, na mwishowe tuko naye Mheshimiwa Omar Mwinyi Shimba, hawezani na msukuma yule kule nyuma. Haya, nitamwacha gavana aendelee aweze kuwataja na wale wengine, lakini mimi nataka kuambia kitu kimoja, tuelewani. Haya, hata yeye pia yawasikia.
Haya, Mombasa hoye! Nitamwacha Kingi amalize kusema, na najua atasema kwanza kama wakili spika na kuona kwa Kwale County. Atasema kama wakili na atasema kama gavana. Lakini mimi niko na ushauri kwa Mheshimiwa Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. Na nataka kumwambia Uhuru, na nisikize vile namwambia, hii nguvu ambayo anatumia sasa, huu uwezo wa kiserikali ambaye anatumia sasa, kama kweli angetumia kwa niaba ya mwananchi, maisha ya wananchi angekuwa mbele leo. Hii nguvu ambayo anatumia sasa, atumie kushukisha bei ya unga nyumbani watu walikokula bei. Hii nguvu ambayo anatumia sasa, apigane na ufisadi katika serikali yake ya Jubilee. Hii nguvu anatumia sasa, atumie kuboresha maisha ya watu ya Wakenya. Mimi my friend nakwambia, tumia nguvu leo, tumia nguvu kesho, tumia nguvu kesho kutwa, tumia nguvu mtondogoo. Msimamo wa Hassan Ali Joho haubadiliki kamwe. Nataka niwaambie hivi, nataka niwaambie hivi, Uhuru Kenyatta alikuwa hapa Likoni na akasema ataninyorosha, ataniangusha, atanisoti. Mimi namwambia Uhuru Kenyatta, na nisikize vizuri, mimi naogopa Mwenyezi Mungu, Muumba mbingu na ardhi. Mimi sikuogopa Uhuru Kenyatta, siwezi kuogopa hata siku moja my friend. Tumia hiyo nguvu leo, kesho kutwa, lakini mimi nami naomba Mwenyezi Mungu wangu usiku na mchana, na niombe ile nguvu ambayo atakuonesha nayo mimi, Wakenya wakuoneshe tarehe 8 mwezi wa 8 mwaka 2017. I want to tell you, the leaders of Jubilee, you will never be gods. You are playing godly today. Lakini mimi nakwambia, Mungu wangu hana hasara my friend. Na wewe jipange, kwa sababu kitabu cha Mwenyezi Mungu kupitia Wakenya ni tarehe 8 mwezi wa 8 mwaka 2017. Sina namna hiyo. So mimi nataka niwaambie, kama kuna jambo lolote, kama kuna jambo lolote, na mimi najua niko na macho makali hivi naona nilipokuwa pale niliona wameshatengeza charge sheet kwa wameweka hapo kando. Wameko tayari kunipeleka mimi makorokoroni. Niko tayari maivena hata sasa hivi. Nimeona wamepanga kunipeleka wapi? Korokoroni. Lakini mimi niko tayari. Na mimi nimeshukuru sana mawakili hapa, wamejitolea wengi sana. Pale kuna kampuni ya Dennis Mosota yuko hapa. Kampuni ya Mohamed Balala yuko hapa. Mohamed Fakia alikuwa pale. Mheshimiwa James Orengo alikuwa pale. Paul Buti alikuwa hapo. Na wakili ambaye anachukua kesi kwa kuchagua Amazon Jeffa Kili pia alikuwa pale. Na Mheshimiwa Kamoti pia alikuwa pale kama wakili. hatuna upungufu ya watu mawabada kutetea kotini, sivyo? So mimi nataka niwaambie, wao wanataka kuwatisha ati mimi sitokuwa kwa debe mwaka huu. Nataka niwaambie, for as long as I'm alive, Mungu akinipatia uhai, mtakuwa kwa debe tarehe 8 mwezi wa 8 mwaka 2017. Na debe hiyo ndio itachagua Raila Amolo Odinga kama president wa nchi hii. Na kama hamuyapendi hayo, my friend, you know what to do. Na kama hawayapendi, huo ndio ukweli wa mambo. Kwa hivyo nataka musitishike, musiogope, musibabaike, sisi tuko ngangari, sivyo? Sasa nataka nimkaribishe, nataka niseme, sijamaliza bado. Nataka nimkaribishe Kingi aseme, lakini kabla Kingi aseme, unajua huu si mkutano wa hadhara.
Mombasa Governor Ali Hassan Joho there addressing supporters right after that grilling session, or recording a statement over allegations of fake academic credentials. Of course, still insisting that this is political witch hunt spearheaded by the Jubilee government, but he says he will face them head on and he does not fear being intimidated by the government. Of course, we'll bring you more details on what had transpired while he was recording a statement, what residents of Mombasa really think about this situation. Our reporter Francis Ontomwa is keeping up to speed with that. Now, Parliament has now been given 60 days to enact legislations affecting the 2/3 gender rule or face dissolution. High Court Judge John Mativo says Parliament, consisting of the National Assembly and the Senate, are guilty of failing to enact the legislations that will implement the Constitution. The verdict was read this morning at the Milimani courts, and here is part of the ruling.
Article 27(8) requires that the state shall take legislative and other measures to implement the principle that not more than 2/3 of the members of the elective or appointive bodies are of the same gender. The period allowed for passing the desired legislation lapsed without the legislation in question being in place. Parliament extended the period by 1 year, but again it failed to enact the required legislation. The extension also lapsed and that window closed. The effect is there is total failure on the part of Parliament to perform a constitutional obligation. The enacting agent is necessary in Parliament, with the Constitution making the sole repository, which the Constitution makes the sole repository of national legislative power. Whereas here, the Constitution requires Parliament to enact legislation to give effect to the constitutional rights guaranteed in the Constitution, and the Parliament refuses or neglects to act the required legislation, as has happened in this case, then Parliament will not only have violated the Constitution, but it will also have violated the fundamental rights and the freedoms of the citizens guaranteed under the Constitution. Refusal to enact the required legislation amounts to denial of the fundamental rights guaranteed to the citizens. A second concern is Parliament's indispensable role in fulfilling constitutional rights. Nikobo J, in the South African case of Nuclex, pointed out that legislation enacted by Parliament to give effect to a constitutional right ought not be ignored. The Constitution delegation of tasks to the legislature must be respected, and the committee between the arms of government requires respect for a cooperative partnership between the various institutions and arms tasked with fulfilling constitutional rights. The courts and the legislature act in partnership to give life to constitutional rights. The respective duties of the various partners and their associates must be valued and respected if the partnership is to thrive. Parliament's failure to enact the required legislation amounts to failure to recognize the important task confirmed on the legislature by the Constitution to respect, protect, promote, and fulfill the rights in the Bill of Rights. Among the relief sought by the petitioners is a declaration that unless the law...
That is the ruling earlier on by Justice John Mativo, and the verdict of the court on the gender rule has been applauded by various stakeholders, including civil society groups. Many welcomed the ruling, saying it was long overdue. They accused members of parliament of breaking the law instead of safeguarding it. Let's listen into what they said shortly after the ruling was made.
I think that has been very key in ensuring that any attempt at rolling back on constitutional gains is stopped in its tracks. This judgment, some of the citations that the judge made, I think are very key, and that we hope that Kenyans are really listening. One of the things he said today is there is nothing like the supremacy of Parliament. Parliament has acted contrary to the will of the people, contrary to the Constitution, contrary to the rights of women in this country. And it has been a persistent battle from the promulgation of the Constitution, because we have been fighting this battle since 2011. And they have found every reason not to enact the necessary legislation to guarantee equal participation of women. And so this judgment comes at an opportune time as this country prepares for an election. And I hope that the political class is listening. I hope that the political parties are listening.
All right, our reporter Sharon Momanyi went to the court and sat in through the whole proceedings. She now joins us live from our city center studios to give us a better understanding of what exactly this means. Sharon, thank you for joining us. A common mwananchi somewhere is wondering, what exactly does this ruling mean?
All right, just as the words you've heard there from the petitioners and some of the interested parties used to describe this ruling, saying that it's absolutely progressive, saying that it is a big win to the quest for gender equality really in the country. And we had there, as part of the clip you've just played, by the ruling of Justice John Mativo, just indicating in his ruling saying that Parliament grossly failed and also breached its fundamental obligations as well as constitutional provisions by failing to enact this particular amendment bill of 2015. Maybe what would be useful, Akisa, is to just bring our viewers to understand what particularly was the call for this petition in the High Court. Now, this particular amendment bill that Parliament, failed to pass last year, in May 5th last year, was a bill that was put together by a technical working group that was put together by the Attorney General. And now this goes way back, right from the 2010 new constitutions. Kenyans passed this constitution, and Article 81 of this constitution stipulates that no particular public service office should have one gender occupy the seats in a proportion of more than 2/3 of the entire office. And so the query then was how exactly to see this rule implemented. What are the action points? How do you actually enact the spirit to particular action points? And so the Attorney General then wrote a letter, a request to the High Court, to the Supreme Court just to find out an advice on exactly how to proceed in seeing this particular article of the Constitution implemented. And so the Supreme Court, ruled that this particular article of the Constitution is absolutely progressive, and said that Parliament had up to August of 2015, to just slowly and progressively find a mechanism that would see action points, a framework for the implementation of this. And so the Attorney General put together the technical working group that, worked very consultatively, just taking opinions from the public, from constitutional experts, to see exactly what would be, feasible kind of a formula to implement this particular rule. And so they worked since that time up to August of 2015, when they provided this proposal to Parliament, and Parliament the first time failed to, adopt it, just moving forward this deadline of August 27, 2015 by 1 year to August 27, 2016. Come that time, they failed yet again. And this is what saw this particular petitioners, including, the Center for the Rights, Education and Awareness, which is the main petitioner in this case, move to court. And what do they want? They want a dissolution of Parliament on grounds that they failed to represent the public, being that this particular rule of law is enshrined in the Constitution, indicating that this is what Kenyans wanted. And so Parliament had the duty to see that there is a framework for the implementation. And indeed, in the ruling by Justice Mativo today, we saw him saying that the Constitution has supremacy and Parliament has no supremacy with regard to articles enshrined in the Constitution. And that is what why we see this petitioners and joint groups, including the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. We have the National Women Steering Group, just all saying that this is indeed a big win for Kenyans, not just for women, because also to note is that, the quest for gender equality is not a woman quest, but an entire, gender quest, in the sense that also women should not occupy, I beg your pardon, more than 2/3 of any public office. So that is what is being described as. So let's remember, 60 days is what Parliament has been given to ensure that this constitutional amendment bill of 2015 is enacted, that there is a mechanism in place. And this would be right in time before the general election in August. So if this works, Kenyans then are possibly looking at a scenario where public offices will be constituted in a way that has been prescribed by the Constitution. Akisa.
All right, Sharon, thank you so much for that update. And of course, we will be bringing you more details and more reactions from that particular ruling made in the morning by Judge John Mativo. But at this point, let's take a short commercial break. Don't go too far. We still have a lot lined up for you here on KTN News Desk.